Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, welcome with me, Nurjanah. Today in this video, I would like to present my analysis about the novel I have read with the title Pride and Prejudice. The table of content is the 9 literary elements in the story, such as language, and then plot, mood, setting, themes, point of view, narrator, conflict, and the last character. Okay, the synopsis is begin from Elizabeth Bennet and Fitzwilliam Darcy were totally incompatible even since they didn't know each other. Elizabeth appraised Mr. Darcy as a proud man and often annoyed. Meanwhile, Mr. Darcy finds Elizabeth to be unrefined and too often prejudiced. For a long time, they were enemies with each other, often throwing sarcasm at each other. That hatred, without them realizing it, gradually became a deep attraction. As time went on, Elizabeth saw another side of Mr. Darcy, that he was not just an arrogant or haughty man as she had thought. The first element is language. In this novel, there are figurative language. There are 3 figurative language. The first figurative language is simile. The second is metaphor, and the third is parable. The first, simile. Simile is a comparison between 2 things using like or as. In this novel, there are example to show the simile. Like Elizabeth compares her heart to a feather. Like this dialogue: "If you limp over him much longer, my heart will be as light as a feather." In this chapter 40. That's mean is the Elizabeth creates an image of just how carefree and light she will feel. This is similar because it is comparison that uses us. And then the second figurative language is metaphor. Metaphor is a comparison between 2 things without using like or as. The example in the novel dialogue is "I have a from Darcy says." Mr. Darcy says, he said, I have been used to consider poetry as the food of love." In the chapter 7. This sentence have meaning. Darcy compare poetry to food. This metaphor tells us that Mr. Darcy thinks that poetry fuels love and feed love. In a sense, he's saying that poetry is essential for love. This gives us a glimpse into Mr. Darcy's romantic side. And the last figurative language is hyperbole. Hyperbole is exaggeration. In this novel, Miss Bingle in an effort to impress Mr. Darcy, tells him, "When have a house of my own, I should be miserable if I have not an excellent library," in the chapter 11. Why this is hyperbole? Because she will not be miserable without an excellent library. She may be unhappy, but miserable is an exaggeration. She is trying to express how sophisticated and educated she is by telling how important books are to her. And that's the second example from Elizabeth tells Mr. Derrick, "I had not known you a month before I felt that you were the last man in the world whom I could ever be prevailed on the marry." In this chapter 30. Why it's hyperbole? Because this is a quite dramatic. She say that she would rather marry any man on earth before marrying Mr. Darcy, but it illustrates how much Elizabeth disliked Mr. Darcy. In the second element is plot. Plot consists of beginning, conflict, climax, and resolution. The beginning is this story begins with Jane's attraction to Bingley, with Elizabeth's interaction with Darcy and his gradual attraction to her functioning as secondary incidents. And then the conflict is this novel centers on whether Jane and Bingley will be able to marry, since Darcy and Bingley's sisters seem determined to keep them apart. And the climax is arise when Mr. Collins begins pursuing Elizabeth, but Elizabeth forced to reject him. After that, Mr. Darcy tries to propose to Elizabeth, but Elizabeth also rejects him. And then the resolution, this story ends when Mr. Collins finally accepts defeat and martyrs Carlotta Lucas, and the Bingley family left Netherfield to return to London. Okay, the third element is mood. The mood of Pride and Prejudice is quiet, satirical. However, it also allows for realism and tender romance in its detailed depiction of character and society. This novel can be considered a novel of manners in that it recounts in exquisite detail the society of Regency England. However, the tone the novel takes toward society's quirks and rules is often caustic. Through offering ironic commentary and a rather hilarious portrayal of Miss Bennet's desire to marry her daughter off, we as rider might be tempted to mock the woman. However, as the story unfolds and sees Charlotte agreeing to marry the stodgy Mr. Collins because she truly does not have other option, and Lydia's endangering of her family when she runs away with a man. These events give a new flavor to Mr. Bennet's antics. While it's remain funny, the satire is poking fun at very real problem women face in the Regency England. Okay, the fourth element is setting. In this setting, there are two adverbs, adverb of time and adverb of place. Adverb of time in this novel began on the late 1700s until early 1800s, and then adverb of place began in Brighton, and then London, and then the counties of Hertfordshire, and then Derbyshire and Kent. There is a country in England. Okay, the fifth element is theme. In this novel, there are 6 themes, such as love, reputation, class, family, integrity, and the last, gender. In the love, from in this novel contains one of the love story between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth. As in any good love story, the lovers must elude and overcome numerous stumbling blocks. Begin with the tensions caused by the lover's own personal qualities. And the second theme is reputation. Reputation depicts a society in which a woman's reputation is the utmost important. And the third theme is class. The theme of class is related to reputation, in that both reflect the strictly regimented nature of life for the middle and upper classes in the Regency England. And the fourth theme is family. Family is an whole theme in this novel. All the characters operate within networks of family connecting that shape their decisions and perspectives. And then the fifth, integrity. Elizabeth Bennet considers herself to have very high standards of integrity, and she is often frustrated and disappointed by the way she sees others behaving. And the last theme is gender. Gender is a key theme in this novel. The story takes place at a time when gender rules were quite rigid. Men and women had a very different set of options and influence. Okay, the sixth element is point of view or POV. In this novel, is narrated by a third person. The narrator has access to the thoughts and feelings of the characters and describes this to the readers. For example, at the start of the novel, the narrator described Mr. Bennet as a woman of mean understanding, little information, and uncertain temper. In this example, there is chapter 1. Although the narrator has access to every character's interior life, the novel's events are usually told from Elizabeth's point of view. Okay, in the seventh element is narrator. The author is Jane Austen. In this novel, the Jane Austen used a third person. Austen's use the third person narration and free indirect discourse is important because this device shows that all the characters, including Elizabeth, frequently make assumptions and errors in judgment. The third-person narrator provides an outside perspective on events, reminding readers that the perception of characters may not always be accurate. Okay, the eighth element is conflict. Conflict in this novel centers on whether Jane and Bingley will be able to marry, since Darcy and Bingley's sister seem determined to keep them apart. Climax are seized when Mr. Collins begins pursuing Elizabeth and she is forced to reject him. After that, Mr. Darcy tries to propose to Elizabeth, but Elizabeth also rejects him. Conflict in here seems like the conflict in the plot I already explained before. Okay, the last element is character. In this novel, there are 15 characters, such as Elizabeth Bennet, Fitzwilliam Darcy, Jane Bennet, Charles Bingley, and then Miss Bingley, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, and then Mr. and Miss Gardiner, and then Charlotte Lucas, and then Georgina Kersey, and then Mary Bennet, and then Catherine Bennet, and then Mr. and Miss Bennet, and then George Wickham, and then Lydia Bennet, and the last Mr. Collins. Okay, the first is Elizabeth Bennet. The novel, this is the character protagonist. Elizabeth Bennet is the second daughter of Mr. Bennet. Elizabeth is the most intelligent and sensible of the 5 Bennet sisters. And then the second character is Fitzwilliam Darcy. William, a wealthy gentleman, the master of Pemberley, and the nephew of Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Though Darcy is intelligent and honest, his excess of pride caused him to look down on his social inferiors. Okay, the third character is Jane Bennet. Jane Bennet is the oldest and most beautiful Bennet sister. Jane is more reserved and gentler than Elizabeth. And the fourth character is Charlie Bingley. Charlie Bingley is Darcy's best friend. He is a genial, well-intentioned gentleman whose easygoing nature contrasts with Darcy's entirely discourteous demeanor. The fifth character is Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. Mr. Bennet has a sarcastic, cynical sense of humor that he used to purposefully irritate his wife. Mr. Bennet loves his daughter. Mr. Bennet very loves her daughter, and Miss Bennet is wife of Mr. Bennet. She is a foolish, noisy, whose only goal in life is to see her daughters married because her low breeding and often unbecoming behavior. Miss Bennet often repels and very suitors whom she tries to attract for her daughters. And then the sixth character is George Wickham. He is a handsome, fortune-hunting military officer. Wickham's good looks and charm attract Elizabeth entirely, but Darcy's revelation about Wickham's disreputable past clues into his true nature. And then the seventh character is Lydia Bennet. Lydia Bennet is the youngest Bennet sister. She is gossipy, immature, and self-involved. Unlike Elizabeth, Lydia flies herself headlong into romance and ends up running off with Wickham. And then the eighth character is Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins is a pompous, generally idiotic clergyman who stands to inherit Mr. Bennet's property. Mr. Collins' own social status is not to brag about, but he takes great pains to let everyone and anyone know that Lady Catherine de Bourgh serves as his patroness. Okay, the ninth character is Miss Bingley. Miss Bingley is Bingley's snobby sister. Miss Bingley bears inordinate disdain for Elizabeth's middle-class background. And then the 10th character is Lady Catherine de Bourgh. She is a rich, fashionable woman. Mr. Collins a patron and Darcy aunt. Lady Catherine epitomizes class snobbery, especially in her attempt to order the middle class Elizabeth away from her well-bred nephew. And then the 11th character is Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner. Mr. Bennet and Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner is Miss Bennet's brother and his wife. The Gardiners caring, nurturing, and full of common sense, often prove to be better parents to the Bennet daughters than Mr. Bennet and his wife. And the 12th character is Charlotte Lucas. Charlotte Lucas is Elizabeth's dear friend. Pragmatic, where Elizabeth is romantic and also 6 years older than Elizabeth. Charlotte does not view love as the most vital component of a marriage. She is more interested in having a comfortable house. And then the 13th character is Georgina Darcy. Georgina Darcy is Darcy's sister. She is immensely pretty and just as shy. She has great skill at playing the pianoforte. And the 14th character is Mary Bennet. Mary Bennet is the middle Bennet sister, and she is a bookish and pedantic. And the last character is Catherine Bennet. Catherine Bennet is the fourth Bennet sister. She like Lydia. She is girlishly enthralled. And the last character is Catherine Bennet. Catherine Bennet is the fourth Bennet sister. She is like Lydia Bennet. She is girlishly enthralled with the soldiers. Okay, that is the 9 literary elements of story. And the next is moral value. The moral value of this novel is to not be too prideful or judgmental toward others. Elizabeth and Darcy are inclined to see the bad in one another initially. Darcy is prejudiced against the unsophisticated people who live in the country, and this initially blinds him to Elizabeth's many positive attributes. In turn, Elizabeth wounded pride prejudice her against him. Eventually, they both learn to overcome their flaws and see how well matched they are. Okay, that's all my analysis about the 9 literary elements of story from the Pride and Prejudice novel. I hope you can enjoy it. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.